First of all, I would like to start saying that when I engaged in my project, I knew that I wanted to take a critical stance towards an understanding of the law. So my role is of a critic, and I have to be able to see the law from an external point of view. I think that something that happens when we study law, I'm a lawyer by training, and I've been studying law for a long period of time. Something that happens is that we start to become blind. We start to become self-absorbed by the law itself, and we understand it as a closed entity that absorbs everything, that absorbs the social world. When we actually need to understand that law is part of the social world. It's not everything. It's not its totality. It's not universal. And I think what I'm trying to say here is to keep perspective, to try to zoom out a little bit and to see and understand what the law is and what the legal system is. And for that, it helps to come back to the basics and to think philosophically, what is the law and how did we come up with the legal system? So at least for me personally, it helps to think about law as a social, as a political construct. It's not a given. It hasn't been there written in the clouds or, given by some divine entity. At least that's not my belief. It's something that we as a society, as human, came up with in order to deal with certain issues, right? That helps a lot. That's a very simplified way to think about the law. What happens is that once the system is set up, we get embedded in it to the extent that we are asphyxiated. We cannot see outside of it. It's like when you are a fish and you are in the ocean and everything you can see it's water, but you forget that outside of the ocean there's also air. You just cannot see it. It gets, embedded in you, and it's difficult to see outside of it. But again, it's important to keep in mind that the law is or can be seen as a social instrument, an instrument for change. And I'm thinking about the value of justice. If the law is not there or out there to help us with social justice, what is it there for? For me, that's my guiding element towards understanding the law. I'm very interested in social justice. And I think the law would not be the same if we don't have that core value in the center of our critique, in the center of our analysis. Nowadays we see the law as this conservative force. It tends to preserve the status quo. That's the way it works. That's why it can be conservative. It can be slow to catch up with modern, I wouldn't say modern times, but I would say that modern issues, on contemporary issues. Also, we can see it as an utilitarian issue or as pure bureaucracy. But I think there's hope. The law is an instrument for change. And even though there are issues with it, it doesn't mean that because we problematize, let's say, in this case, the human rights discourse, it doesn't mean that we don't believe in it. I think that a person who problematizes something, for example, I'm a feminist and I tend to problematize gender dynamics that I think they are unfair. It's not necessarily the person who is going to come and ruin the party, or the hopeless person who is always negative and is always trying to look for problems out there just for, the sake of being a pessimist or something like that. I actually think that a person who wants to change, who is able to point out what the problem is a person who has a lot of hope, because you are trying to point that out because you believe that there is a possibility of something better. It implies that there is or there could be another reimagined system that could work better, that would be more just, that would be more fair. And I think that the law comes in that scenario as an instrument. And yes, it's problematic. It's slow, tends to be conservative, tends to preserve the status quo. I myself am using a Marxist social reproduction approach, which is basically a Marxist type of feminism. So, critical of the role of the law. And I understand the power connotations and the ideological connotations within the discourse of the law, but I still believe that it can be a positive agent of change. And I specifically believe in the symbolic value of the law. So when you are saying something, when you're putting something into words, the symbolism is very strong. You're trying to convey a message, and that message itself is not just words, it's also action, it's also practice in the way that can reach certain groups of the population that, for example, have never been recognized, that it can lead to recognition. And that recognition in itself can be empowering. This is to say, is it enough? Is it enough to have this convey message in a paper or this sort of formal equality approach? Let's say, is it enough to have an instrument saying or stating the rights in a very pretty manner? No, it's not enough, but it's necessary. And it's very important for certain groups of the population. So we need to recognize that. Also, we need to recognize that the human rights discourse or the law can become the language of emancipation for certain groups that have been historically marginalized. So they can use these words, this human, for example, the idea of or the concept of human rights. You can have a cause or a collective cause claiming for a particular human right. And they're using the same language that you see in international instruments, because that's a way for them to adopt a particular language and to be able to express their aspirations and their claims, generally speaking. So I think it's important to just, first of all, keep perspective, to sort of zoom out and to remember why the law exists, what it means, to always keep in mind the value of social justice, and to problematize it, to say, okay, yes, I'm engaging with the law and I am very critical of it, but it doesn't mean that I don't believe in it. It actually means that I actually believe a lot in it, because I think that it can be an instrument for change, and because I believe that with this instrument, we can achieve something better, not just something better for the most privileged ones, something better for everybody. So we're talking about substantial equality.